Here we are once again, my brothers and sisters. I want to say thank you for being here for another Living Hope Today study. I'm so happy you're here. And today we're going to watch God do something that only God can do. When you have an enemy, one of the things you want to do is figure out the strengths, the weaknesses, the positions, the strategies of your enemy. Because especially when it comes to war between countries, if you're going to be victorious, you have to evaluate your enemy correctly and take measures to conquer their strengths and exploit their weaknesses, right? That's just how war works. But today we're going to see the people in Palestine, the people who occupy the promised land, the pagan nations that God has determined to judge. They really have no idea that ultimately their enemy is God himself. There is no strategy, there is no power, there is no weaponry that can defeat him. They don't get it, but they're about to get it. Let me show you what I mean in Joshua 11. When we get to verse 1, when Jabin, king of Hazor, heard of this, he sent word to Jobab, king of Madon, to the kings of Shimron and Akshaph, and to the northern kings who were in the mountains, in the Arabah south of Kinnereth, in the western foothills, and Naphath Dor on the west. So, King Jabin, he is going to form an alliance. He is not going to try to defeat the Israelites on his own. He's seen their strength. And now what does he decide to do? He decides he's going to get everybody together to take on Joshua and the Israelite army. Verse 3, to the Canaanites in the east and west, to the Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, and Jebusites in the hill country, and to the Hivites below Hermon in the region of Mizpah, they came out with all their troops, and a large number of horses and chariots, and a huge army as numerous as the sand on the seashore. In other words, we're talking about extreme numbers, extreme power. I mean, just imagine you're Israel and you're watching this allegiance form among your enemies, and they all have one intention. Their intention is to kill you and to drive you out of the land that they've lived in. Wow, would you be intimidated? All these kings joined forces and made camp together at the waters of Merom to fight against Israel. That's why they're there. What they don't understand, what current politicians don't understand, is to fight against Israel means you're fighting against God himself. Can you win when you fight against God? Seems like a stupid question, self-evident question, but there's a lot of people in the world that don't think they can. They don't think God can beat them, even in today's world. Well, anyway, the Lord said to Joshua, what does the Lord always tell Joshua? Don't be afraid. Be strong and courageous. That's what we've seen time and again in this book. Don't be afraid of them, because by this time tomorrow, what's going to happen? I will hand them all over to Israel. I will. God says, look, I'm going to defeat them. I'm going to be the one not to lead the battle, but I will defeat them myself. Do you see this? I will hand them over to Israel. How? Slain. By the time you guys get to them, they'll already be dead. This is the judgment of God, the act of God. You are to hamstring their horses and burn their chariots. In other words, once I kill them as an act of judgment against them, you are to destroy those weapons of battle that they have. So Joshua and his whole army came against them suddenly at the waters of Merom and attacked them. Notice verse 7. Joshua has full confidence that what God has told him is absolutely true, that God's going to apply his power, that he doesn't have to worry about the size, the weaponry, the veracity of these people, because God himself has promised to slay them. All right, and the Lord gave them into the hand of Israel. They defeated them and pursued them all the way to greater Sidon and Mizrephoth Maim, and to the valley of Mizpah on the east, until no survivors were left. All right, again, we see that the Lord is the one doing the action. Joshua did to them as the Lord had directed. He hamstrung their horses and burned their chariots. In other words, there's no opportunity for organizing an army again, at least not for a long time. And that at that time, Joshua turned back and captured Hazor and put its king to the sword. Hazor had been the head of all these kingdoms. All right, so the leader of the group is the one that gets to go to the grave first. Then listen to this. Everyone in it they put to the sword. They totally destroyed them, not sparing anything that breathed. And he burned up Hazor itself. Joshua took all these royal cities and their kings and put them to the sword. He totally destroyed them as Moses, the servant of the Lord, had commanded. I just want you to see when we read these passages that God is behind the command to destroy these people. Is God mean? Does God just hate these people? Is that why he's so motivated? Well, God's made a promise to Israel that they're going to have this land, so he's going to keep his promise. But the bigger picture is this. These pagan nations are sacrificing their children. They're worshiping demonic forces. They're totally evil. God judges out of holiness. Yes, his anger burns against evil, but his holiness is what demands the elimination of evil. And if we look at these passages and say, well, gee, God, that's just not really right. You're just killing these people for no reason. We have to understand the heart of God. He'd save them all if they'd follow him. But they have decided to follow demonic forces instead and live in this pagan idolatry. And what does that mean to them? Judgment. What does that mean to all of us who refuse God's salvation through Jesus Christ and follow our own way, do whatever we think is right? Do we think the end of our rebellion is going to be peace and love and happiness? God has promised to pour out his wrath against sin. And we see in this microcosm here in Joshua 11, God doing exactly that. Exactly that. God's wrath is to be feared and is absolutely severe. As the passage moves forward, yet Israel did not burn any of the cities built on their mounds except Hazor, which Joshua burned. The Israelites carried off for themselves all the plunder and livestock of these cities, but all the people they put to the sword until they completely destroyed them, not sparing anyone that breathed, as the Lord commanded his servant Moses. So Moses commanded Joshua, and Joshua did it. He left nothing undone of all that the Lord commanded Moses. Again, there it is in black and white. This command originates with God himself. In fact, when we get to verse 20, you'll see something even more profound than this. So look at this in 16. So Joshua took this entire land, the hill country, all the Negev, the whole region of Goshen, the western foothills, the Arabah, and the mountains of Israel with their foothills. He took it all. We'll see in a map just in a moment or two. I'll show you. From Mount Halak, which rises towards Seir, to Baal Gad in the valley of Lebanon, below Mount Hermon, he captured all their kings and struck them down, putting them to death. Joshua waged war against all these kings for a long time. So we're told about Mount Halak. I want you to remember that. We're told about Mount Hermon. That's the range. Let's go to the map. Here comes the map. It's too small for you to see on your phones, I'm pretty sure, but nonetheless, I want to just point at something out. Mount Halak, there it is, way down south, south of the Dead Sea, south of Jerusalem, south of the Mount of Olives. It's at the very southern edge of their territory. Okay, Mount Hermon is where? Way up there, way up at the top, the northern. So you can see that Joshua is conquering all of the promised land. He is overwhelming the enemies of God, and Israel is occupying huge, vast area, right? They're taking it. They're defeating them. All these kings are being defeated, all right? So there's the scope of what's happening from north to south, according to Joshua 11. Except for the Hivites living in Gibeon. Oh, there is an exception. You remember these guys made a treaty. They asked for mercy. Not one city made a treaty of peace with the Israelites, who took them all in battle. So only the little group of Gibeonites came and they lived through the conquest. Why did they live? Because they made a treaty. Even though it was deceptive, the Israelites had to honor the treaty not to kill them. We saw that last time. But here's the verse. Here's the verse for you to think about. It's one I'm thinking about. For it was the Lord himself who hardened their heart to wage war against Israel, so that he might destroy them totally, exterminating them without mercy, as the Lord had commanded Moses. There's no reason for us to try to get God off the hook for ordering the destruction of people. God is a God of mercy, yes. God is a God of love, yes. God is a God who will save all who will come to him by faith in Jesus Christ, yes. He is a God of salvation. There is a way of escape. But for those who refuse him and for those who worship the devil and commit evil, God has in store for them wrath. And here we see that God himself has the right to decide who is going into his kingdom and who is not. Here he hardens the hearts of these kings, and he hardened Pharaoh's heart too. Remember back in Exodus, God says to these guys, you're not going to turn. I know you. You're not going to turn to me. Okay, well then I'm going to harden you so that I can wage war against you. You're going to come against me. You think you're going to defeat me, but look what it says, so that he might destroy them totally. Exterminating, look at that word, exterminating them without mercy. This is the Lord's intention, to destroy the evil in the land, to wipe it out completely. No remnant left, although we will see from time to time there are still people in these locations. At that time, Joshua went and destroyed the Anakites from the hill country, from Debron, Debir, and Adab, and from all the hill country of Judah, and from all the hill country of Israel. Joshua totally destroyed them and their towns. Again, chapter 11 is rough, isn't it? He just keeps doing it. No Anakites were left in the Israelite territory. Only in Gaza. Does that sound familiar to you? Gaza, Gath, and Ashdod. Did any survive? Okay, back to the map. Where's Gaza on the map? There it is. Over there by the Mediterranean Sea. Where's Gath? There's Gath on the map. Where's Ashdod? There it is. We'll see the Israelites battle the Philistines ongoingly throughout the record of Chronicles and Kings and 1st, 2nd Samuel. But here's this area that God does not completely destroy. Over here, just to circle it so you get your perspective, that's the Mount of Olives. That's right near Jerusalem. All right, but these three areas are specifically taken out, and we're told that people survived there. And notice in 22, we're talking about the Anakites. Remember the original spies that went to spy out the land? Who were they afraid of? The Anakites. Okay? Now they're no longer a factor. So Joshua took the entire land, just as the Lord had directed Moses, and he gave it as an inheritance to Israel according to their tribal divisions. Then the land had rest from war. So by the end of Joshua 11, we are in a position where the promised land has largely, if not completely, been absolutely defeated and conquered. The Israelites are moving in. We'll take it from there next time, church. God bless you. I pray you serve him well today.
Who is it who for sinners shed his blood, and now for cleansing all can plunge beneath that flood? It's Jesus. But do you know who he is? He's the image of future, the past. He is God.